Vengeance. Justice.
Power. The time for war has come.
For the Republic!
It's a new episode of the Tour Report.
Our time has come.
Why don't we begin by having you introduce who you are and what your role with, I guess you guys are BioWare Houston? Austin.
Austin, that's correct.
Austin. BioWare Austin.
Yes, so I am Charles Boyd. I am the lead writer for Star Wars The Old Republic. What that means is I sort of oversee the overall narrative of the game as we progress through our updates, and sort of also, it involves all the nitty-gritty stuff, writing the dialogue, writing, codex entries, designing quests, all that sort of stuff as well. Yeah, so it's sort of the high-level overall story stuff as well as the, meat and potatoes of actually writing it and getting it off for actors to voice over and into journals for you guys to play.
Awesome. So we have previously had Hal Hood when he became lead writer, 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. We had Blaine, Christine, yeah, who's one of the producers. So we last time we had him on, he was talking about what the change to free to play and what the differences are. So I guess the very first question, this is actually a listener question, is has the change to free to play affected the way that you guys have approached the game at all?
From a writing standpoint, not a whole lot. We still view things in terms of story arcs, individual quests, that sort of thing, which are part of our regular updates. They aren't usually part of our microtransaction or market content. Usually, or really all of our story content is released, as a standard part of our game releases. It's not a premium bit of content, except when large expansions come around. But that's sort of a separate deal. We would have, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not that particular aspect of it hasn't directed our storytelling directly.
Okay, so I guess one of the big questions is, when you guys changed to free-to-play, that's when we were told that the game is basically the way you guys wanted it, you wanted to release it, and so from then on you guys are creating new and exciting content. So what's the plan for approaching the future of the Old Republic now? Like, not necessarily exactly what's coming, because
sure,
can't
right.
talk about that, but like, what's the direction you're going now? Is it mostly end-game content? Are you planning on adding stuff in the actual game itself? Like, what's the direction you guys are facing as far as writing goes?
Yeah, I'd say most of our content is designed for the in-game players. Obviously, we've told the story up to that point, and we want to continue that story and add new chapters to it. So that means continuing from that point. We do have a few items, though, that we are trying to add in over time as well to give leveling up players, some new and different content, or particularly players who are doing, their second or third or fifth or sixth character, something new to do as they're leveling up. So we're adding some new flashpoints and other bits that enhance the story a little bit through there. They're not as story heavy as our class stories or world arcs or anything like that, but add some extra color to that leveling up process, and maybe give some other options for players to work their way through the game.
So a lot of the future stuff, at least immediately, would be like the space combat, the war zones, and the flashpoints, the side stuff that you can do if you want or you don't have to.
Correct. We've got some series of flashpoints coming up. The first of which will be coming out in our 2.7 release, and that is going to start our next big story arc. So obviously, it's optional, in terms of the way players play, but it's not. It will be part of the crit path over the next storyline going forward.
Okay, so one of the big things you guys have done recently is you added a lot of the Starfighter combat stuff, which of course you've been able to do escort missions before, but how long was that in development? How long were you guys planning to add that in there? Was it just really hard? Was it just logistics to get it in there eventually, or was it just the natural sequence of adding that in there?
Right. Yeah. It was something I think everyone was always interested in doing. We're all huge fans of those games. X-Wing, TIE Fighter, and that sort of thing. So we were always really, jonesing to get that stuff in, and we just had to, make certain decisions as you're developing a game. It's basically its own whole entire game on its own. So making another whole game in our whole game was a little too much to begin with at launch, but it was something we always planned to expand on, and I think we were all really thrilled to get people shifted towards that after launch and work on it until now when we've been able to release it.
So one of the great things that I really like about the Old Republic, which I still play, I actually put on like 4 hours yesterday.
Awesome.
I play a lot is, of course it's Star Wars, and it connects with the Old Republic, and the Knights of the Old Republic, which I love in a much more complete experience. So for advancing in this one, where are you guys mainly drawing like your influences as far as what you want to do in the future? Is it coming from, say, Lucasfilm and look forward in Star Wars, or are you still drawing from different parts of the Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2 that you guys wanted to share the stories of? Or what's the direction as far as the writing goes? Where are you getting influences now that you've created hundreds and hundreds of hours of?
Yeah, it's tough. We've covered a lot of ground at this point. But yeah, I'd say we're still pretty firmly in the Old Republic type setting. There's still a lot of threads dangling from those games and from our own game that we want to explore more fully before we move any further down the line and start introducing anything totally new. Hopefully we're using that stuff in a new and interesting way and giving players something, some new viewpoints on things that maybe they hadn't considered before or didn't see coming.
Are you guys going to continue to try to, I know some of the plot points which I've run into and so on actually do this. Are you guys going to try to continue to resolve the messy ending that was Knights of the Old Republic 2 that we know what happened. Stuff got cut and Obsidian couldn't finish the game the way they wanted, but
right.
Are you guys going to continue to try to resolve that ending to make it so it actually at least makes more sense?
There will definitely be aspects of it that maybe will inform backwards towards that. Obviously it's a few hundred years before our game, so it would be a little awkward to sort of jump backwards that much and really get into the nitty-gritty of it. And especially for players who hadn't even played Knights of the Republic 2, to kind of get back into the real detail that you would want to really, bring that to where they had originally intended it. I think would probably be a little outside of our scope. But I was a big fan of that game too, so I would love to keep dealing with those kinds of ideas and the ideas that they brought up and that sort of thing.
So, as a writer, what brought you onto the Old Republic? Did you come in from the very beginning, or did you come in later? And what is your favorite class story to write?
So I came into the Old Republic pretty early. I wasn't there from the very beginning, but I was within a year or so. So I went in pretty soon after they opened the Austin studio. In terms of, so yeah, it's been an interesting ride going from writing for a game for that long before it ever was released, before anyone ever saw it. We created just such a huge amount of content. It was a lot to keep in your head. It was a really fascinating process. Before launch, I wrote for the Trooper class, so obviously I'd have to pick that as my favorite thing to write for. Although at this point we write for all the classes, so I'm no longer allowed to officially pick favorites, but unofficially the Trooper.
So when we first talked with Hal Hood in, I think it was August 2012, he said that at that time the Old Republic equaled about 230 Empire Strikes Back scripts. Do you have any idea how many would be now?
Oh, no. Hal's much better about knowing the lengths of movie scripts. He was a movie screenwriter himself at one point in TV, I think.
Well, how many pages would you add when you add, like, say, a flashpoint or, like, when you add some content stuff? Like, how many pages is that flashpoint usually?
Well, it's interesting. We don't really view it in pages. It's by word count and by line count for the actors. We really only print it in pages for when we go to record. Otherwise we view it all in the tools because it's this. It's a very complex sort of branching dialogue. So the page doesn't really reflect it very accurately. It's hard to follow along when you're reading it like a regular screenplay. It's much easier to follow along in the sort of cascading tree sort of format. But I would imagine, it's been 2 years. Did you talk to him before or after we released 2.0, Rise of the Hutt Cartel?
I think it was just before, because we talked to him. He announced on our show that he was now head writer.
Yeah. So that was a huge amount of writing for us, and then we've put out pretty regular updates. They're not huge in terms of script lines or anything like that individually, but I think added up, I'm sorry, I don't know the math, so I wouldn't want to give out a BS number, but many probably thousands of lines of dialogue and Alien since then.
Okay, so we have a lot of listener questions. We'll see how many we can actually get to.
Sure.
So one of them is, what is the thinking behind labeling choices dark side versus light side? Have you guys ever thought about going into some really tough, morally complex choices and so on? What's the thinking behind a lot of those choices?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the light side versus dark side stuff is obviously it's a core part of Star Wars itself and of Knights of the Old Republic and other Star Wars properties. So we really wanted to get that in as part of the player's experience. Obviously, we love doing really complex, morally gray kind of choices, but and at least I like to think we had a few in there to begin with. Especially in classes, outside of the Jedi and Sith, in the agent or bounty hunter, or the trooper and the smuggler, they can have a little more leeway to be gray and have more kind of gray options as they go through. But ultimately, it is it's a Star Wars story. It's a Star Wars product, and you really want to have that light side and dark side that players identify with from the films, and allow their choices to reflect where they would stand in the Star Wars morality, and not just in our own Earth sense of right and wrong and good and bad.
So I remember talking with Hal Hood about the Jedi Knight one early on in your Typhon. There's some difficult choices where someone who helps you, and you can even develop a romantic relationship with betrays you and so on, and how that struck me. Is there anything particular that you were really proud of, that a choice that you made that you forced players to make, that you're really proud of the writing of, that you like how it turned out?
Yeah, there was a character named Jaxo. I won't describe the choice just because it's a little late in the game, so it's a bit of a spoiler. But I was really pleased with how that scene came together. I think the sort of drama of it worked out well. The actors did an amazing job projecting the right emotion and giving the scene the kind of feel that it needed to make that choice hopefully a really difficult one and a really interesting one for players. When
you write a lot of these lines, you actually write them now with a voice actor or a certain person in mind, now that we've had all these things recorded in this massive project, all these different voice actors. Do you actually write with people in mind, or do you write it and hope they get the right person?
As much as possible. Obviously, I mean, a lot of our characters are already cast, people like people who play the Jedi Knight or the Sith Warrior or what have you. So we kind of know what they sound like and how they do things. So we try to write to their strengths. And similarly, yeah, we have a lot of involvement with the audio and voiceover team. I was actually just out in LA last week, sitting in on the voiceover recordings. So we have a lot. Yeah, I wouldn't say we're ultimately responsible for casting or anything quite that high level, but we do get a lot of involvement with it and a lot of input. And so we do tend to, whenever possible, have an actor in mind. It just it brings a lot more to the writing and stuff. Although that said, sometimes you'll get a new actor, someone you don't know, and they'll come in and they'll bring their own sort of take on it that just improves it or twists it in your head in such an awesome way that suddenly you couldn't imagine having done it without them. You know what I mean? The actors have so much skill and so much that they bring to the project.
Yeah, and they make the character better than you could have been.
Exactly. They bring so much to it. It's really awesome.
Okay, so here's another one. This was actually asked by 3 different listeners, so I don't know if you can actually answer this one.
Okay.
But have you guys considered or are planning on adding any more playable races or classes in the game, or that you're writing right now?
Playable races, I don't know much about. That would come down to a lot about art time. I think we talked about that with the Cathar, that our races the players can be require a lot more aesthetic options, a lot more particular animations so that they look good in close-ups for conversations and when they're doing actions and stuff. So a lot of work goes into making one of those. That doesn't mean we're not doing them again. I'm just, as a writer, I'm not familiar with our schedule, our timeline for that. In terms of playable classes, I would bet that that probably won't be happening anytime soon, just because of the massive amount of class story content that we have in the game already. Adding another class would mean we would want an entire storyline for that class so that they could proceed through the game with the other classes from level 1 to level 55. And right now there wouldn't be the same amount of content for them, and it just wouldn't work out very well. I like to never say never, but that's pretty unlikely at this point.
You should just add a scavenger class, and that could be a Jawa, start on Tatooine. It's like cause havoc and be like a level 50 Jawa and still not be useful.
I love Jawas. They're so cool.
So this one's a two-parter, but I'll ask this whole question. It says, what all goes into coming up with a new expansion or new content for an MMO like this? And does the Old Republic being Star Wars make it more difficult to expand into new worlds or easier?
So, you mean from like a production standpoint? How do we put that
I guess
together?
Since you're a writer, we'll go from your viewpoint as a writer, and it's a process that you know of that you.
So yeah, we kind of look at what kind of resources do we have for the time period where we're expecting to release the content. We get together with the artists, with the designers, and audio, and try to all the big stakeholders, and kind of discuss. We've got these kind of people, we've got these kind of resources, how big of a, new planet can we make, or a new area, or what have you. And then once we kind of have that in mind, we go, try to dig into the lore a lot and pick something. Ideally, we try to pick something that already exists in many cases, because obviously the Star Wars universe is so huge already. And there's already so many cool, awesome things that, have either only been described in books or maybe even only been described in a single paragraph, but they open up just a huge world, to make a lame pun, of options for us to do and explore and depict. So we'll try to find something that fits what we're able to do, and move forward from there. We'll try to think about how that area's involvement would affect the overall story of the galaxy, or is this something that brings a new challenge to the balance of power? Is it something that is a resource, like McKeb was in Rise of the Cartel, where both factions are after it? And then sort of proceed from there, kind of spin out where we think that area would come in to affect the other storylines that we've already been developing. As far as working within the license, like I said, the Star Wars is just so huge. It's basically infinite. So if we had a particular story we wanted to tell, if we had a real goal in mind that didn't fit any lore based planet that already exists, we would totally have the freedom to add our own. And LucasArts has been very supportive in doing that. They're really awesome to work with, and give us a lot of leeway in terms of developing our own ideas for the Star Wars galaxy, and adding our own worlds to it, which is something we've done a fair bit of at this point as well. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's limiting at all. I'd say it's been awesome.
So, since LucasArts got, I guess, closed or licensed out, and EA has the license for, 10 years or whatever, have you guys gained, more freedom that way, or does LucasArts still work with you just like they did before they got licensed out and you guys got the license? Has any of the process of creating the Old Republic changed?
No, not really.
Anything?
We still submit all of our content to Lucas for approvals. They're the masters of the Star Wars universe, and we want to be sure that our stuff fits with the overall feel of that universe, and that we're getting our facts straight when it comes to the minutia of lore. So yeah, they still review and approve or suggest changes as necessary. That process hasn't really changed.
So I'm assuming you're a big Star Wars fan.
I am.
Writing for this game, have you ever had an idea that's so outlandish that you wanted to put it in paper, but Lucasfilm was just like, no. Or
No.
the other writers had to rein you in?
Not me.
So someone has.
Some maybe from time to time, but no. I think for me at least, I really love Star Wars as it is. A lot of people want to bring in other things from other, they're like, oh, I saw this on this TV show. That would be really cool as a Star Wars thing. And Star Wars does support that to some degree. I mean, it's already a huge pastiche of Westerns and samurai movies and war movies and everything. So it's pretty easy to bring in outside influences, outside ideas, and sort of make them fit within the Star Wars universe, really seamlessly. So I think you kind of have to go out of your way to get an idea that's too crazy to fit. So no, at least for me, I've always felt pretty naturally about coming up with new ideas and stuff to fit into the universe.
Okay, so this next one is a listener question again, and I think this one you can probably answer pretty well. It says, what is the vision like in terms of mature content? How far is too far? These two listeners say how they've seen some pretty gnarly stuff playing Darkside Bounty Hunters and Imperial Agents, but it's never quite shown. So what is the line as far as the mature content goes?
Yeah, I mean, I think the darkest stuff we would want to do would still be hopefully in the PG-13 kind of realm, and ideally most of our content isn't even at that, at that level of darkness or grittiness. It is a teen-rated game, so we try to keep within that rating. We're required to do that, so we do our best to uphold that. We want it to be a game that people can play with their family up to within a certain age range anyway, and enjoy it. So it's not the kind of thing where we would do really hard R kind of heavy gore or violence or heavy sexual themes, things like that nature. It needs to fit as though it would fit in a Star Wars movie, as much as we can manage it.
So you guys don't plan on pushing as far as, say, like as Mass Effect or Dark or Dragon Age and so on, because you guys are keeping to the T.
Correct.
Star Wars fans.
Exactly.
Okay. Has there ever been any pressure to try to push it that far, or has it always been this is Star Wars? Star Wars doesn't go that far.
Yeah, exactly. We always knew this is a Star Wars thing. We're not trying to make a R-rated Star Wars or anything like that. We
aren't going to push those buttons right now.
Exactly. And then even if like I said, we were never interested in it, but I'm sure Lucas wouldn't be particularly interested in us doing that either. So
so they'd say no.
All parties agree where it should be at.
Okay. Do you ever actually log on to the game and watch, observe what people do and they say and so on?
Yep. It's a lot of fun. It's hard to keep your mouth shut though. We try to play anonymously, so we don't want to direct players in any particular direction when we're playing. But it is fun to see what they think of things and their interpretation of the story, especially for me. That's one of my favorite parts of it.
So here's a strange question that I suppose since you actually do log on that you might at least be able to recognize. So the listener wants to know, why is it that the Republic chat always seems to have crazy people in it? The Imperial chat has competitive jerks, it logs on, and the Jedi Knight chat seems to be bombarded with conspiracy theorists. Do you understand why this happens?
I truly don't. I would suspect that it might vary from server to server in terms of which faction's chat is crazier. But no, unfortunately I don't have any deeper insight into the psychology of who picks Republic and who picks Imperial, and what kinds of crazy things they're going to say in the chat window. we haven't done any studies yet, but maybe that would be a worthwhile thing to do.
Studies and so, do you guys have you done any studies involved which is the preferred class and races where players prefer to go? Have you done any studies like that?
Yeah, we have a lot of people, or rather, we have a lot of interest in metrics and trying to view what are players drawn to, what kinds of options do they pick the most, what kind of options aren't they picking, and then especially why do they make those choices, more to the point, because sometimes the answer isn't as straightforward as the numbers would suggest. So yeah, we study metrics heavily as we release things and watch them out in the wild, so to speak. To get a sense of how they go over and what was successful and what wasn't.
So where does the player base of the Old Republic lean? Is it more towards the troopers? Is it Jedi and Sith, as most people would probably guess, or is there a surprising answer and it's like Bounty Hunter or something?
Yeah, I actually don't know. That's one thing that those numbers don't inform. Obviously, we still create content for all 8 classes equally when we're writing story stuff. So. We would never say, oh well, 60% of players are Jedi, so 60% of our writing will be for Jedi. We wouldn't do that sort of angle. So I don't actually know the numbers off the top of my head.
I guess I can ask Eric that question.
Yeah, if he doesn't know, he might be able to get them for you.
Okay, so I guess a few more questions is so. Is there a difference between writing, say, a Flashpoint, Warzone, and Starship stuff as compared to like the main story, as far as like how you guys approach it, or is it all this is Star Wars, we have to approach it in a this has to fit in this type of world setting, and you guys just go from there?
Yeah, I'd say Flashpoints fit in pretty closely to how we would have how we wrote all of our other story-heavy content, world arcs and things of that nature, because they're more dialogue-heavy. Stuff like war zones and space things, those are more based on transmissions. They're informative stuff. We try to give them character and personality and backstory to make them more interesting. But ultimately, they're there to serve a gameplay purpose. We want to be sure the player understands what's happening and is drawn into the action directly. So writing for those is a little different. We start more from the gameplay side of things. We really want to understand how this war zone works or how this starfighter map is being played, so that we can be sure the transmissions are conveying what they need to convey to the players in hopefully the most efficient way we can. Versus like a Flashpoint or a story arc where we have an overall plot that we're aiming to tell, or an overall sort of character development that we're shooting for, and sort of work backwards from that.
Oh darn! So you've written a lot of the story parts of this game in Flashpoints. Do you have a favorite Flashpoint that you've created? At least one that's your favorite to what's your favorite to write and you like people playing?
I don't know. The two main ones I did for launch were the SLEs and Directive 7, and I was really happy with both of those for different reasons, different ways. And then really my favorite stuff that I've done though actually hasn't come out yet. It's yet to be released. I'm pretty excited about it though, so hopefully we can talk about it more once the word gets out. But I think it's going to be really cool. I'm really excited to see what players think of it too.
Ooh, we like that idea. We like having more content coming the way that you're really excited for.
Oh yeah.
So I guess we're going to begin winding this one down.
Cool.
What can you tell us or tease us about what's coming in Tor? We know there's an event coming up soon with bounty hunters where anyone can do bounty hunter quests.
Yeah, we'll be bringing that one back.
Is there anything anything else you can elaborate on or tease us with for upcoming content with Tor?
No, I think it's at this point it's probably still just far enough out that I should be very careful about what I say. So I'll just say I'm really excited about it, and we're going to bring in some new faces, hopefully bring back some old ones that you'll be interested to see, and we'll see how things go. Hopefully y'all enjoy playing it as much as we've enjoyed creating it.
Okay, that's awesome. So I guess there's a couple of small questions to wrap it up.
Okay.
One is there's a lot of humor in the Old Republic, especially I noticed on Tatooine, where I love Jawas too, and there's lots of funny things. If you just walk around listening to what people are saying to Jawas, is there any particular favorite comedic moment that you contributed to, or that you really like, that you think came across really, really well in the game, that just makes you smile when people see it?
Oh man, I don't know. It's hard to pick. I think my favorite comedic character, who actually I didn't even do originally, was a character named Fez Burba. He's on Tatooine. He's also on Coruscant. He's this sort of pitiful scientist who's always thinks he knows the secrets behind what's happening and is pretty much always wrong. But he's so sure of himself. He's a lot of fun to write and play through. I'm a big fan of the Gree that we've done for the Gree event and for other things. They're writing for their language and sort of their bizarrely optimistic scientific speech is a lot of fun. I get a big kick out of doing those.
Did Lucasfilm or LucasArts have to help you guys with languages, or did you guys create the languages and send it to them, or was it a bit of both?
A bit of both. So, languages for aliens who already exist, like Erodian, Kubaz, these kinds of things. Obviously, they already have an idea of how those are supposed to sound. So, they more give us what the files for that, or the the audio kind of thing for those kinds of characters. But for someone like the Gree, where no one's ever heard them speak before, we actually got a lot of input on how they should sound and how they speak and that sort of thing, which was really cool to get to contribute at that level of Star Wars nerdiness. It's really exciting.
since you guys are writing Star Wars, and since you're writing all the time, I'm assuming you guys are writing hours and hours at a time. You guys ever just find yourselves, sitting there talking like Jabba the Hutt, or
every day,
Jabba?
every day. Yes, we like to quote our favorite alien VO lines a lot in meetings and stuff. So it's exactly as Star Wars nerdy as you would think it would be.
So people will come up behind you and start speaking in Huttese, and you can respond.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that it's legible Huttese.
Okay, so I guess the last thing we do is you always give every guest a chance to promote anything like usually they can promote how people can get in contact with them, any upcoming cause, any other projects. You can promote the game more, but we're going to give you a chance to have the soapbox to stand up and say whatever you want to the fans. Right. It could be, we've had people give speeches to the fans, telling them to calm down, do stuff are coming. So whatever you want to say to the fans.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I said, we've got a lot of really cool stuff coming down the pipe. I'm extremely excited about it, and I can't wait to see what they think. I just want to thank our fans so much. They've stuck by us for many years now, and hopefully they'll keep giving us a chance to show them awesome Star Wars stuff and hopefully enjoy it. So thank you to you and to all our fans who play the game and keep us going. I like having a roof over my head. It's pretty cool.
And until December 2015, this is the biggest Star Wars content we're getting, and it's pretty darn impressive. So good job, you guys.
Thank you very much.
And we look forward to talking to you guys more in the future, because I'm not stopping playing Tor. I've put hundreds of hours in there, and I've barely touched one of the classes.
Oh wow!
I have hundreds of hours. I'm a completist, and so I have to do everything.
I know what you mean.
So thank you for creating this, guys, and thank you again, Charles, for talking to us.
Oh, fantastic! Thank you for having me. It was a great time.